All right, welcome to Pro Football's first 50 years, where we take the past and we bring it back to life. Now, I'm strictly talking the first 50 years here, 1920 to 1970. And especially if you're going to go maybe check out a game from the 20s or the 30s. I mean, of course, you can go online and find a box score, like who won, who lost, who scored a touchdown, who kicked the field goal, how far it was, what the attendance was, where the game was played at. You might be able to find starting lineups for each team, but exactly what happened during the game? Well, thanks to old newspaper articles, we get to take a little bit of a deeper dive into each and every game during the first 50 years of professional football. Now, a little news flash here for you. Ain't no fancy videos or nothing like that. All there is you and me for the next 30 to 60 minutes. So if that's all right with you, let's get it on in today's game. Unbelievable. Exhibition game, but a rematch? Oh, yeah. The Cleveland Browns at the Detroit Lions, Briggs Stadium / Tiger Stadium. Exhibition game, September 13th, 1959. But interestingly, this is the second time these two teams will face off against each other in the preseason. That doesn't usually happen too often, especially not nowadays when you're only playing 3 games. I mean, that'll never happen. I mean, you're not going to see the Giants or play whatever, the Carolina Panthers 2 times. That's not happening. Well, it happened here. The first, now this is like the exact opposite. The first game was a snoozer. This one wound up being very, very exciting. So September 13th, 1959. Now, once again, as you notice, I mean, these two teams still have one more preseason game to go after this one. In the modern era, I mean, we're into the season already. Nope, not back then. And interestingly, this will be Detroit's 6th preseason game, and they still have one more to go. This will be the Browns' 5th, and they have one more to go. Let me show you the. Let's pull up the Lions. They played 7 preseason games. Now, slightly differently. I mean, this is a disappointing season for both teams, but this is exhibition. As we'll take a look at the Lions first. They're disappointing because when you win the championship in 1957, and you only can come up with 3 wins 2 seasons later. I mean, that's a big disappointment. Now, as you'll see here, right, they played the Rams, they played the Cardinals. This is incorrect. All right, here. And I can't get a hold of Pro Football Archives. There's nowhere it says that to contact them or anything like that. So this is wrong. The Cardinals won this game 21-19. Here it says the Lions won, which is incorrect. But you'll notice here in the 3rd game for the Lions, they played the Browns. And then notice 3 games later, they played the Browns again. This one they played in Akron, Ohio at the Rubber Bowl. Well, this one is actually in Detroit at Briggs Stadium. But I mean, for the Lions, this was just a horrible season. I mean, they did one. This is preseason once again. I mean, they did okay. Certainly did okay during the exhibition. Of course, you want to do okay in the exhibition, but once again, it's only the exhibition season. As we see here, the regular season was a whole lot different. I mean, they started the season off with 4 losses. I mean, basically after the first 4 games, I mean, really, they didn't know it at the time. The talk on the town, there's quite a few coaches were saying 8-4 would win the division. So of course, the talk of the town, there were quite a few coaches that mentioned 8-4 would win the division. They were wrong. 9-3 would win the division. But I mean, so after the first 4 weeks, they had 4 losses. So according to the talk on the town, according to a few coaches, the Lions would literally have to run the table the final 8 games to finish 8-4 to hopefully have a chance at maybe winning the Western Division. Well, that didn't happen because it wouldn't have mattered anyway. After the first 4 weeks, of course, they didn't have a crystal ball and they couldn't see into the future that the Baltimore Colts were going to finish 9-3. But basically, after the first 4 weeks of the season, any title hopes they had were pretty much null and void. So they had, pride to play for the rest of the season. But they beat the Rams, who only won 2 games all season. Then they tied the Steelers team, who was 6-5-1. Then they beat the Rams, who only, I just said that, right? Only won 2 games. And then down here, they beat the Cardinals, who only won 2 games. So when the Lions did beat a team, the team they beat was not very good. So this was a major disappointment for the Detroit Lions all season. Let me show you the Browns, though. Now, the Browns, a little bit different here, a little bit different. And, a little spoiler. I mean, this wound up being a very exciting game, as we'll see right here. The Browns would lose this one 31-28. Lions would come from behind right at the end and pull it out. Now, possibly, I'll go over this in a little bit, but possibly the Browns fell asleep toward the end of the game because maybe they didn't get enough sleep. More on that in a little bit. But as you'll see here, I mean, they lost 2, just exhibition. They lost 2 games to the Lions, right? A 9-3. I mean, my goodness. I mean, they even couldn't even kick the extra point in this game. It was that bad. But this was an exciting game. And then they would beat a very good Bears team to end the exhibition season. Now going in here, they were 6-2 after they beat the Redskins 31-17. They were 6-2. The Giants were 6-2. So after 8 weeks, with 4 weeks left to go, the Browns and the Giants were, tied at the top. It was kind of a lot of teams, not teams, but a lot of the writers and the newspapers and stuff kind of seemed to think it might have the kind of the photo finish that they had in the 58 season, where both teams wind up tied at the end of the season. They had a playoff game to see who would go to the championship and all of that. Well, that didn't exactly happen. As you see here, the Browns lost 2 one-point games, 2 tough losses. 1-point game. One of these games, Lou Groza missed an extra point, which obviously, would at least tied them. But they had these 2 tough losses right here. They still had a chance going into the final 2 weeks of the season because the Giants had 2 losses, the Browns had 4. So if the Browns would win the final 2 games while the Giants would lose the final 2 games, they would both have finished the season with 8-4 records. But it was not meant to be. The Giants would blow the Browns out. Actually, at one point in this game, it was 48-0. Bobby Mitchell ran a punt back for a touchdown to get the 0 off the board for the Browns in this game. So I mean, these 3 losses right here were crushers. But I mean, once again, it was a Cleveland Brown team. They were a formidable opponent, and as I said, 2/3 of the way through the season, they were tied for first. So, but I mean, all in all, to lose 3 games in a row, Paul Brown's teams did not do that very much back then. But I mean, the Giants and the Browns, from like when the Browns got into the league in 1950, all the way to the Giants were good until 1963. These were pretty much the 2 top teams every year. Both these teams was either the Giants went to the championship or the Browns went to the. So basically, from 1950 to 1965, 16 straight seasons. Every year except for one, the 1960 season, either the Giants went to the championship game or the Browns did. So, but this year the Giants would win. Of course, it didn't. The division wouldn't help them when they went to the championship game, but. But this game wound up being a lot more exciting than this one right here. This one was played in Akron, Ohio, at the Rubber Bowl. This one obviously was played at Briggs Stadium, the home of the Detroit Lions. So let's take a little look here. Let's go to Wikipedia, and we'll pull up a little Briggs Stadium, or as they say in Wikipedia, Tiger Stadium. It changed names. Share the screen. Tiger Stadium, Wikipedia. All right, here we go. And actually, back in the day, it was known as Navin Field. Now, interestingly, 1925, the Detroit Panthers were, I'm going to say about 5 minutes away. They were literally about 5 minutes or so away from. They actually almost won the crown in 1925. They were beating the Rock Island Independence 3-0. They were at home. It was at Navin Field. But apparently, according to articles and stuff, Rock Island, it was a good team that year. And they scored a touchdown toward the end of the fourth quarter. Apparently, in a lot of the papers, it seemed like the Panthers, the Detroit Panthers, were tiring out and all and everything. Well, so Detroit wound up with a record of 8-2-2 that season. Had they held on and had Rock Island not scored a touchdown at the end of that game, the Detroit Panthers, who played at Navin Field, because the field, it changed names multiple times, you see here. The Detroit Panthers would have been your 1925 NFL champions, but it was not meant to be. Anyway, so it was known early on in the 20s as Navin Field, and then Briggs Stadium when the Lions, started playing there. And then, of course, it changed its name to Tiger Stadium. Of course, it was a multi-use stadium located in the Corktown neighborhood of Detroit, Michigan. The stadium was also named the corner for its location at the intersection of Michigan and Trumbull Avenues. It hosted the Detroit Tigers from 1912. So it was an old stadium, boy. It's a 1991, as well as the Lions from 1938 to 39, again from 41 to 74. 75, they went inside. Bunch of pansies. Tiger Stadium was declared a state of Michigan historic site in 1875. Last Tigers game at the stadium was held on September 27, 1999. In the decade after the Tigers vacated the stadium, several rejected redevelopment and preservation efforts finally gave way to the stadium's demolition. Shame. Lord knows what it would have cost, unfortunately, to try to, it's obviously not cheap to, if you got a stadium kind of falling apart, it gets expensive. So, 1895, Detroit Tigers owner George Vanderbeck had a new stadium built at the corner of Michigan and Trumbull Avenues. That stadium was called Bennett Park and featured a wooden grandstand with a wooden peaked roof. What's up, buddy? My buddy Randy's here. All right. At the time, some places in the outfield were only marked off with rope. 1911, new Tigers owner Frank Navin Field, right, ordered a new steel and concrete baseball park to be built on the same site that would see 23,000 to accommodate the growing number of fans. Navin Field opened on April 20th, 1912, same day as Fenway Park in Boston. Now, it's like, well, Fenway Park's still around, thank goodness, but shame Tiger Stadium's not. But just goes to show you, how incredible it is with Fenway Park. 1912, this is 2026, 114 is the 115th season. They're playing in the same stadium. Holy cow. Wow. Thank goodness, too. While constructed on the same site as Bennett Park, the diamond at Navin Field was rotated 90 degrees. Shoeless Joe Jackson, later banned from baseball, scored the first run ever at Navin Field. Over the years, expansion continued to accommodate more spectators. In 1935, following Navin's death, new owner Walter Briggs Sr. oversaw the expansion of Navin Field to a capacity of 36,000 by extending the upper deck to the foul poles and across right field. By 1938, the city had agreed to move Cherry Street, allowing the left field seats to be double-decked and now renamed Briggs Stadium. Had a capacity of 53,000. In 1961, new owner John Fetzer took control of the stadium and gave it its final and longest-lasting name, Tiger Stadium. That's appropriate, because the Tigers were in there, longer than certainly longer than the Lions. The Lions were around from 1930 to 33. They were the Portsmouth Spartans. 1934, they moved to Detroit, where they became the Lions. Features, it was cool. I mean, dead center field, to the left of dead center field near 440 mark. I mean, it's a flagpole, iconic flagpole was taken there. Of course, that's where, I think it was the 71 All-Star game where there was like, oh my God, that All-Star game had it was like 20 or so future Hall of Fame baseball players playing. It was like who's who was in there. It was unbelievable. Reggie Jackson drilled one over the roof. I mean, oh my goodness. Wow. It's a beautiful, beautiful ballpark. A postcard showing Briggs Stadium, 1938 to 45. It was just absolutely freaking beautiful. Right here. Bennett Park on October 12, 1907, during the World Series game between the Tigers and the Cubs. It's crazy, huh? The professional football. Tiger Stadium was home of the Lions from 38 to 39, and again from 41 to 74. The stadium hosted 2 NFL championship games in 53 and 57. Both games the Lions won. The football field ran mostly in the outfield from the right field line to left center field parallel with third base. Well, I'll show you some pictures, show you how it ran. However, in the early 70s, the city of Pontiac and its community leaders made a presentation to Metropolitan Stadium Committee of a 155-acre site on the city's eastern boundary. Initially, a dual stadium complex was planned. That included a moving roof that was later scrapped due to high cost and the lack of commitment from the Tigers. The Metropolitan Stadium Committee voted unanimously for the Pontiac site. In 1973, ground was broken for a stadium to exclusively host the Lions. Lions played their final game at Tiger Stadium on Thanksgiving Day, November 28, 1974, against the Denver Broncos. Well, as you can see, I mean, Joe Louis fought there. University of Notre Dame played the University of Detroit at Briggs Stadium. Soccer was there. Kiss played there. I mean, how cool is that, huh? When Ty Cobb played at Navin Field, the area of dirt in front of home plate was kept wet by the grounds to slow down Cobb's bunts and cause opposing infielders to slip as they fielded him. The area was nicknamed Cobb's Lake. So he could get a bunt down there. It wouldn't roll too far, give him a good head start before anybody could pick the ball up. And, of course, if they ran too fast, it was wet, so they would slip and fall. So, of course, that helped Cobb. But, I mean, who didn't play? I mean, like Babe Ruth was playing there, Lou Gehrig. I mean, all-star games were there. Say the 71 Major League Baseball all-star game, the AL won 6-4. I mean, so many things happened there. Just, absolute shame. Let me show you some pictures. Maybe just a shame that they, couldn't keep it. But unfortunately, the Lions went indoors and started playing on artificial turf. I don't even get me started on that garbage. I can't stand it. Football is meant to be played outdoors on grass in the weather elements. Here's a picture right here from 1959 at the Briggs Stadium, right? And 2 years later, it would be called Tiger Stadium. But I mean, look at the goalpost here. How cool is that? Right on the, right, of course, on the goal line. Actually, I'm sorry. That looks like they're maybe about a yard back or so, I guess, from the goal line. But you see, they got like this tape wrapped around the pole. Of course, it's like, they got padding on here, a little padding. Certainly wouldn't want to run into it, that's for sure. Here's a picture here. The goal lines. I'm sorry. So you figure home plate's over here. So you figure the one end zone is around the first base, and it goes all the way out to left field over here. Here's another picture over here. Right, same thing over here. First base here. If the Lions played their final game at Tiger Stadium, not much. Well, I don't think this is it. There's not a picture. 1974. I kind of doubt that. But once again, it shows you how the field's laid out. This might be one of the championship games. I don't know. I think I played. This wouldn't be. This could be the '53 championship game right here, possibly, because Bobby Lane did quarterback. There was Tobin Rote quarterback the Lions, and actually this it looks like the uniforms, if anything, look a little bit older than '57. So I'm saying this could be the '53 championship game. NFC. Oh, there it is, '53. Briggs Stadium, December 27, 1953, NFL championship game. This was hold on. Lions won this one 17-16. They won the one the year before. Detroit beat the Browns 17-7 in 52. 53 they won 17-16. And then in 54 they had another rematch, but this time in Cleveland Stadium the Browns would prevail 56-10. Let's see, what do we got here? Okay, here we go. Here it is right here. Briggs Stadium. 1959. There you go, with a capacity crowd. All right, so you got the one end zone over here, right? This would be, I guess, home would be here. I guess you can kind of see the infield right here. So you got the, by first base is the one end zone. Oops. Well, all the way out over here. Well, there we go. Very, very, just, does this say what it is? That doesn't say. It just shows a postcard, I guess, or a picture. Very nice, clear picture. I love it. Love it. Yeah. Other than, I mean, of course, there were some nice games that were played there. A lot of them, obviously. A couple of the championship games. It was nothing. It wasn't. It's not like more like wasn't like Lambeau Field or something like that. But there were some great games. I mean, look at this right here. Look at the freaking padding on this one here. What was this? It was 1952. I mean, look at that. I mean, it's tough to say. I mean, look how high off the ground he is. Possibly the ball cleared the crossbar here, and he jumped up and grabbed it. I mean, wow. Unbelievable. And I'm not sure. Probably colored, I'm going to say. But look, right, we got the Detroit Lions at Briggs Stadium. So that one's colored. But just, once again, beautiful, beautiful stadium. Yeah, it's a shame that they couldn't. This is in the 40s. Once again, this is colored. Right. Shame they couldn't keep it, but it is what it is. So, all right, let's see what the word on the street is, huh? Let's go. So we have the September 13th, 1959 edition of the Detroit Free Press. Let's see what they got to say about the game. All right, Detroit Free Press, September 13th, 1959. Here we go. All right. Lions and Browns play for real. Exhibition's over. I'm not sure what the heck they mean about that one, because this is an exhibition game. I don't know what the heck they're talking about. George Wilson insists there is a difference between exhibition football games and preseason games. Oh, maybe, I don't know. The Lions have finished playing exhibitions for this year. Okay. So I guess this is a preseason game. What remains before the National Football League season opens September 27th are 2 all-out dress rehearsals. Okay, so I guess this is not an exhibition. It's not a preseason. This is an all-out dress rehearsal. Okay. The first with the Browns at 1:30 p.m. Sunday in Briggs Stadium. So I don't know. The one that they played 3 weeks before against, I guess, was just an exhibition game. I don't know. But this is an all-out dress rehearsal. Some 35,000 are expected to see the revitalized Lions and Browns battle for the second time in a month. The game will carry all aspects of a regular season game with a national television audience. And I tell you, wound up paying off because I said this wound up being a very exciting game, especially right at the end. And the side attractions of the University of Michigan Band and 1,200 members of the Muslim Shrine marching units. Wilson is convinced that this rematch of the Lions and Browns will offer more than the Lions' earlier 9-3 victory achieved in Akron, Ohio. And yes, absolutely. Both clubs have lagged dangerously until a week ago. Both suddenly came to life with impressive victories. The Lions whipping the Eagles 35-24 and the Browns upsetting Los Angeles Rams 27-24. All of our experimenting is finished, the coach said meaningfully. We have our lineups established and it is time to set them to work. Whether this means that Tobin Rote will start at quarterback against the Browns, Wilson would not say. Both Rote and Earl Morrall will be used. Rote, however, has assumed leadership of the Lions again following his sparkling work against the Eagles, in which he completed 18 of 25 passes and threw for 3 touchdowns. And he ran for 1 as well, too. So he had a heck of a game. And he led all rushers in running yardage the week before. That's not something you want your quarterback nowadays to be able to say, but Tobin Rote did that the week prior. Well, actually, it was 10 days prior. It was because it was the Lions played their previous exhibition game, dress rehearsal, whatever the coach wants to call it. It was on September 3rd. This is obviously the 13th. His receiving group will be slightly handicapped. Jim Doran is handicapped with a pulled leg muscle. Dave Middleton is completing his schoolwork at the University of Tennessee. Otherwise, the Lions will display their full talent and show off their new offensive line for the first time. The new wall has Charlie Ann at center, Harley Sewell and rookie Bob Gratkow at guard, John Gordy and Ollie Spencer at tackle, and Doran, Steve Junker, and Jim Gibbons sharing the end posts. This is the crew whose effectiveness will determine the Lions' fate in the upcoming season. Against the Eagles, it was commanding. The Browns themselves are considerably different from the club the Lions whipped a few weeks ago. Coach Paul Brown has shuffled line position so thoroughly that the Browns look like a new team. Moreover, he has changed quarterbacks. Jim Nanowski, a Detroit boy, lost his hold on the quarterback job in the earlier Lions-Browns game. Mill Plum, who was number 1 last season, has taken over again. There is one historical note. Cleveland has never won a game at Briggs Stadium. The Lions hold a 16-4 edge in the series. Yeah, that was one thing. I mean, even as good as the Browns have been throughout the 50s, they're hard. One of the possibly, I guess, their hardest opponent to beat was the Lions. All right, so let's see. So now we'll go to, I guess maybe their kryptonite. I guess the Lions' kryptonite has always been the Lions. The Browns' kryptonite has been the Lions. September 13th, 1959 edition of the Grand Rapids Press. Ooh. What do they have to say on the game? It's Lions versus Browns again today. Again. Detroit out to repeat their earlier 9-3 victory. Here's some of the guys running, toting the leather. Coach George Wilson of the Lions expects this quartet of backs to rack up a lot of yards against the Browns Sunday. Shown left to right, Ken Webb, Hopalong Cassidy, Dan Lewis, and John Henry Johnson. Rounding into the home stretch of the 1959 preseason schedule, the Lions renew their intense rivalry with the Browns Sunday afternoon in Briggs Stadium. Kickoff is 1:30 p.m. The game is sponsored by the Muslim Shrine Football Charities Incorporated, with proceeds earmarked for the Shrine Crippled Children's Hospital Fund. There seemed like almost pretty much every game there was like some type of a charity going on in the exhibition, preseason, whatever you want to call it. Back then. It will be the next to last preseason game for both teams, and both George Wilson and Paul Brown will be operating with the players that will carry them in the National Football League race. Polishing rather than experimenting will be the keynote for both teams, as both ready for the season's opener on September 27th. Detroit gained its first victory of the preseason campaign over the Browns on August 22nd, winning 9-3. The Lions put together the greatest rushing attack in more than 3 years and scoring the victory, stepping for 251 yards. The Lions entered the game with 2 victories, 2 losses, and a tie. Detroit downed Cleveland, and Philadelphia lost to the Giants and the Chicago Cardinals, and tied the Rams 20-20 in the first game of the season. The exhibition season. Cleveland lost to Pittsburgh, Detroit, San Francisco, and defeated the Rams 27-24. Last week against Philadelphia Eagles, the Lions, paced by the great all-around play of quarterback Tobin Rote, combined an effective passing game with a solid rushing attack for the first time this season. Rote hit on 18-25 pass attempts, which is very good back then. For 272 yards, and led all the team rushers with 69 yards for one of his best performances in a Lions uniform. Wilson gave much of the credit for the Lions' fine all-around performance against the Eagles to the readjusted offensive line anchored by Charlie Ann at center and solidified by tackles John Gordy and Ali Spencer, and Jim Doran, Jim Gibbons, and Steve Junker, and with guards Harley Sewell and rookie Bob Gratkow. The combination gave Rote fine pass protection and opened up holes regularly in the Eagles' defensive line. After much early season experimenting, Brown has settled on Milt Plum as his number 1 quarterback, and for the former Penn State star, probably will carry most of the load against the Lions. Jim Nanowski, former Michigan State star, will be held in reserve, with a backfield that includes fullback Jim Brown and halfbacks Bobby Mitchell and Ray Renfro. Cleveland has assembled one of the fastest combinations operating in the league. Oh, yeah. Detroit has dominated the annual series against Cleveland like no other team in the league. Counting all games, preseason, regular season, and championship games, the Lions have won 16, lost 4, and tied 1. So after this game, there would be 17, 4, and 1, including the preseason against the Browns. So, I mean, you got a record like that going against the Paul Brown and the Browns. I mean, that's very, very impressive. All right, so we got what we got here. One more. We got the Plain Dealer. That's a Cleveland paper. The September 13th, 1959 edition of the Plain Dealer. All right, Browns and Lions go all out in game today. And the game starts at 2:30. Channel 8 you'll notice here, right? There's only, unlike, the way it is now going into like the last preseason game, the way it is now, there's like 90 guys on the roster. Well, that's not the way it was back then. I think they had to get down to 35. When the season started, they only had 35 or 36 guys on and of course, everybody dressed. Unlike this, this era, where you got 53 guys, but you only allowed, I think, dress 46. But here they had to get down, I think it was 35 to 36 players. But of course, when it was game day, they all dressed. Where are we at here? Experimenting is just about over for both the Browns and the Lions, who meet for the second time in this exhibition season this afternoon at Briggs Stadium. The Lions were 9-3 victors in that first meeting in Akron, but both Paul Brown and George Wilson have considerably altered their lineup since that night. Cleveland's biggest switch saw Milt Plum return as the regular quarterback, and they pilot the Browns to a 27-24 victory over the Rams last Sunday. Milt will be at the helm against the Lions and may go the entire distance. Bobby Mitchell had joined the team only a few days before the Rubber Bowl game. Now he is established as the regular left halfback, and Preston Carpenter has been switched from halfback to end. 5 players have just checked in from the All-Star camp and had finger cramps from trying to catch up on their playbooks. All still are with the club, and John Wooten, 245-pound guard from Colorado, has moved in as one of the regular messengers. Ohio State's Dick Shafrath is making a strong bid for the post of extra defensive end, and Francis O'Brien is constantly improving at offensive tackle. Rich Kreitling, first draft choice from Illinois, is in a tough fight at offensive end, and the same goes for Michigan's Bob Tasic, trying to dislodge Ed Modzelewski. His brother, Dick Modzelewski, plays on the Giants. So she's trying to dislodge Ed Modzelewski as the second fullback. The Lions used 3 quarterbacks in that first meeting, but Wilson has settled on the veteran Tobin Road, as was expected. Road connected with 18 and 25 passes as the Lions beat the Eagles last week. So he poses another real problem for the Cleveland secondary, riddled by Billy Wade 7 days back. This day of polishing rather than experimentation will see John Henry Johnson at fullback for Detroit, with Hopalong Cassidy and Dan Lewis at the halfbacks. Detroit has looked both very good and terrible in the exhibition play. The low point was when they lost 38-0 to the Giants, at home, no less. The Lions were sharp in that victory over the Eagles and played steady football in a tie with the Rams and a 2-point loss to the Chicago Cardinals. Cleveland, which has played one less exhibition than the Lions, had a sputtering offense and losses to Detroit, Pittsburgh, and San Francisco. Today, Brown will discover whether if it was a gelling Cleveland attack or a shoddy Rams defense that made the difference last Sunday. The kickoff is set for 1:30 p.m. Detroit time, or 2:30 Cleveland time, and the game will be carried by television station WJW. That's why one paper said the game starts at 1:30. Well, that's obviously Detroit time, and Cleveland time. I guess the hours must be a line going right very close, between Detroit and Cleveland. So that way in Cleveland it's 2:30. So. All right, as I said, once again, those are the numbers. So let's get into action here, right? We're going to go, let's see, with the plain dealer once again, which is the same paper here. All right, I think that's it for this paper, right? Yeah. Let's go to the plain dealer, the September 14th, 1959 edition of the plain dealer. Let's get the game on. Let's get it going. What happened? Clean dealer. All right, here we go. All right. And just in case you're wondering, in case you had any money bet, the Cleveland Indians lost 2 games. Yes, they did. Browns lose at Detroit. I love this. Man, I mean, that's a tackle. Man, the dude is literally sideways. And he loses the ball. Bobble stops Browns. Leroy Bolden of the Browns is tripped up at the Lions' 1-yard line in the second period. Terry Barr on the ground hits Bolden. Then Gary Lowe leans into him, causing the Cleveland halfback to fumble. The Lions recovered to halt the scoring threat. Wow, at the 1-yard line. Wow. He gets upended and the ball goes flying at the 1-yard line. And it will come back to haunt them. Browns lose at Detroit. All right. There may be something to that rumor that the Browns are jinxed at Briggs Stadium. At any rate, it took a number of unusual occurrences for them to bow to the Lions 31-28 yesterday before 33,435. That was a nice sized crowd for an exhibition game. With only 4 minutes and 25 seconds remaining, Paul Brown's team held what seemed to be a comfortable 11-point lead. 4.5 minutes to go. They were up by 2 scores. Unlike today, 2 touchdowns. Unlike today, you can get a field goal, a touchdown, and a 2-point conversion. Back then, 11 points means, if you're going to try to take a lead in 2 scores, you better score 2 touchdowns. Then began a strange chain of events which saw Detroit, aided by Leroy Bolden's fumble, score twice and maintain a record of not losing to the Browns in 10 meetings in this baseball park. Lions moved 88 yards in 11 plays, but had considerable help from the officials. When the attack bogged down there, it was a personal foul call and 2 holding penalties, good for automatic first downs. Lady Luck was with Detroit even on John Henry Johnson's touchdown run, which made the score 28-23. Vince Costello, Cleveland linebacker, almost intercepted quarterback Tobin Rhodes' pass to Johnson, but the ball slipped through his hands and Johnson scored on a 23-yard play. Even after Jerry Perry's placement, the Browns had a 4-point lead with only 1 minute and 33 seconds left. Jim Martin boomed the kickoff to the goal line where it was grabbed by Bolden, the little speedster from Michigan State, who had cost the club a touchdown with a fumble in the first half, smacked into a wave of Lions, and once again the ball squirted from their arms. Wow. So the dude cost him, basically gave him 2 touchdowns. He fumbled earlier, which the Browns could have scored a touchdown, and here he lost a fumble, which might have given the Lions a touchdown. So Dave Witzel, the Detroit defensive back, recovered on the Cleveland 28. Rhodes' pass to Johnson on the next play for the winning touchdown seemed anticlimactic. Till that deflating windup, it was a pretty good afternoon for Paul Brown's team, sparked by the running of Bobby Mitchell and Jim Brown. The Browns tallied all 28 points in the last 3 quarters for their biggest offensive show of the exhibition campaign. Mitchell, certainly one of the, and you got some of this right here, right? First downs, let's see what we got. Total first downs, Detroit at 21, Browns at 16. 218 yards rushing. It was basically everything almost identical total yards. The Detroit had 100 rushing, 200 passing. The Browns 200 rushing, 100 passing. Cleveland was very good with the 11 out of 16, while Detroit was only 13 out of 29. Let's see. Opponents, let me look at this. I'll get you. Opponents fumbled, recovered. Detroit recovered 3 fumbles. Meanwhile, Cleveland recovered 5. So apparently every fumble that happened, the other team got it. Detroit fumbled 5 times, and apparently Cleveland got all 5 of them. Wow. Yards penalized. Detroit only had 9 yards penalized. Cleveland had 7 penalties for 55 yards. All right, so what do we got here? Anything up here? Nope. All right, so let's go. We got everything else here is pretty much just baseball. But we got Mitchell, certainly one of the. So let's go to the next Detroit, the next plain dealer paper, the next page. Mitchell certainly is one of the. Got to find it. Most exciting runners in the game. That's spot on. Broke loose around right end for 40 yards in Cleveland's first touchdown in the second quarter. This swift halfback from Illinois, who managed 97 yards from scrimmage, returned a kickoff 90 yards a few minutes after the touchdown burst. Cassidy nails Mitchell on 5. Bobby was dragged down on a 5 by Howard Hopalong Cassidy, and the Browns failed in the opportunity when Bolden fumbled on the 1. Wow. Wayne Walker picked off the ball and returned it to the Browns' 40 to end the threat. Mitchell also showed some inside running with a 3-yard plunge for the Browns' 4th touchdown. Jim Brown, who totaled 79 yards rushing, took the handoff from Milt Plum and raced 42 yards for the second Cleveland score. Ed Modzelewski, something of a forgotten man, moved in as halfback in the 4th quarter and plunged a yard for the first of the 2 Cleveland touchdowns that period. Danny Lewis, second-year halfback from Wisconsin, took a pitch out from Rote and went 10 yards for the Lions' initial touchdown. Nick Petrosani, rookie from Notre Dame, plunged 2 yards for the second, and then Johnson, the former 49 fullback, took charge of the comeback with the aid of Rote. Plum completes 11 of 16 passes. The winning points were provided by Martin's 30-yard field goal. Milt Plum, going the distance at quarterback for the Browns, completed 11 of 16 passes for 135 yards, but once again couldn't connect with the long one. Rote clicked on 13 of 29 for 205 yards and the 2 touchdowns. The Cleveland defense seems to be shaping up despite the 31 points allowed, and the offense again showed improvement. It appears, though, that the Browns will be a running team, and what else could you expect from Bobby Mitchell, Hall of Famer, and Jim Brown, future Hall of Famer, in the same backfield? Even that pair of talented hoofers weren't able to beat the Briggs Stadium Hex, though. And you got the starting teams, shall I say. Let's see. Browns scored 17 points, right? So going into the 4th quarter, they were up 24-17. Well, something's wrong here. No, my bad. Can't be. No. This is 7. They scored 7 here. This is. That can't be. It can't be 17. 7. That would be 20. That means they would score 38 points, which is wrong. So this is probably 7 points here. We got over here. Leroy Bolden may have fumbled himself off the Browns yesterday. That's a good assumption. The plucky little halfback from Michigan State seemed to have the team made again until 2 costly bobbles and the loss to the Lions. Now another cut-down alignment is under consideration. It would have both Bo Tasic and Ed Big Mo Modzelewski staying with the team. Mo showed he could play the halfback yesterday by plugging 1 yard for a touchdown from that position. Tasic, playing fullback, set up Bobby Mitchell's second score with a 25-yard gain up the middle. 4 players must go before tomorrow night when the squad must be shaved down to 38. Final trimming was made somewhat easier when the player limit was up to 36 from 35 over the weekend. That move is believed to be a forerunner of expansion in the National League. Houston and Dallas are the most likely additions for next season. Each team now operating would have 18 to 20 untouchables. The new entries would pick 2 or 3 from the remainder for the nucleus. So what they're trying to do is have a bigger squad. And that way, as I said, they have here, there might be 20 players that are untouchable. Well, that way there's 16 players from each squad that, I don't know what it's Houston and Dallas, just that the Dallas Cowboys can pick from. So the only Houston team the following season would be the Houston Oilers. And that would be in the AFL. Paul Brown wasn't talking about any jinx in the dressing room after the loss as Detroit reporters tried to quiz him on the Cleveland string of losses at Briggs Stadium. Just say that the Lions are a good football team and deserve to win, he said. The coach was disappointed with the defeat, but still said the staff had learned some things. Dick Shafrath strengthened his bid at defensive end with a steady showing. Charlie Ann, oversized Detroit center, was tossed out by the officials for unnecessary roughness in the last quarter. The Browns came through unscathed, although the manner in which they lost left bruised feelings. That would piss me off. I mean, if we're winning by 11 points with 4.5 minutes to go, yeah, you should win that football game. All right, so let's go to the Akron Beacon Journal. Ooh. What do they got to say? The September 14th, 1959 edition of the Akron Beacon Journal. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. All right, here we go. Dazed Browns get little respite. The Browns can sympathize with old Mother Hubbard. They thought they had the prize locked up, but when they got there, the cupboard was bare. The Lions had stolen the game. The shock of having an 11-point lead wiped out in the space of 2 seconds in the last 2 minutes of play still hadn't worn off when the Browns arrived back in town by bus Sunday night. But there isn't much time to fret over Sunday's 31-28 loss to Detroit before 33,435 pleasantly startled fans at Briggs Stadium. Looming immediately ahead is the prospect of facing the Chicago Bears, the only unbeaten team in the league, in the preseason windup at the stadium Saturday night. Even more pressing are the decisions on player cuts demanded by the league rules. Paul Brown and his staff tonight will study films of the Detroit game and reach final conclusions of 5 players to be released Tuesday. Offensive right tackle continues to be a problem with sophomore Willie Davis, the future Hall of Famer, who will go on to grand and glorious things with Vince Lombardi's Green Bay Packers. With sophomore Willie Davis and freshman Francis O'Brien still having their troubles. A successful launching of the regular season may hinge. May hinge? I thought they would say may hingle on the return to action of team. I'm going to say may hinge on the return to action of team captain Mike McCormack. We did a lot of things well, was the only bright note sounded by Brown in the gloomy post-mortem of the 4th defeat in 5 preseason games. Both teams played giveaway. In the last half, the Lions fumbled the ball away 4 times and set 3 Cleveland touchdowns. The Browns topped that by bobbling away the entire game. A fumble by Leroy Bolden on the Detroit 1 enabled the Lions to take a 17-7 lead to the dressing room at halftime, when the score should have been 14-14. The Browns were ahead by 28-17 with 4 minutes and 25 seconds left in the game when the Lions began an 88-yard drive. 3 penalties on Cleveland kept the march going to the Browns' 24, from where Tobin Rote pitched a perfect interception to linebacker Vince Costello. "I should have had it," groaned Vince. "It was right in my hands. There was no excuse." Instead, the ball popped through and fell into the arms of John Henry Johnson, who moved over to halfback for the Lions with rookie Nick Petrosani at fullback. Johnson, by then, was in Junior Wren's area in the zone defense, but Wren lost track of the ball when it reached Costello, and the Lions had a TD with 1 minute 33 seconds left. Boulder again fumbled the ball in returning the kickoff, and on the first play, Rote again hit Johnson over the middle for the winning points. On that one, linebacker Galen Fiss was supposed to cover Johnson, but the Lions' big back was all alone when he grabbed the ball on the 28-yard on a 28-yard tally. Bobby Mitchell was the Browns' offensive hero with a 59-yard scoring run around right end and a 91-yard kickoff return before Bolden's first miscue. Jim Brown went 42 yards down the left side. Ed Modzelewski bucked across from the 1, and Mitchell went 3 yards off tackle for the Browns' other TDs. The Lions' first half points came on an end run by Dan Lewis, a buck by Petrosani, and a 30-yard field goal by Jim Martin. The Browns' miseries didn't start at Briggs Stadium Sunday, though. That's where they ended. The first woes occurred, and this is what I was talking about in the beginning of the video, is that maybe they started snoozing off a little bit. The first woes occurred in the small hours of the morning in the team's Detroit hotel. Muslim temple Shriners, celebrating long after a big parade Saturday night, created a series of corridor disturbances. A nod interrupted the sleep of many of the Browns. Maybe they did it on purpose, huh? Paul Brown didn't escape either. He was awakened by the roar of a motorcycle being driven up and down the hallway. Paul Brown didn't escape either. Paul Brown, the coach, was awakened by the roar of a motorcycle being driven up and down the hallway of their hotel. Somebody drove maybe a Harley or whatever, a motorcycle, up and down the hallway of their hotel. So you tell me, was that done on purpose? Small parades complete with drums and bugles were still shattering the players' slumber at 4 a.m. Costello finally threatened mayhem to a group outside his room. I can understand that. Complete with drums and bugles at 4 a.m. So you tell me, was that done on purpose? Yep, absolutely it was. It was reported that on Friday, a 100-piece band blasted out number on every floor of the hotel through much of the night. Yep. Is that done on purpose? Absolutely. So, that is what it is. To play a game on the road, huh? All right, the Detroit Free Press. So we're going to go to the September 14th, 1959 edition of the Detroit Free Press. What did I got to say on the game there? Dun, dun, dun. Detroit Free Press. All right. Shades of 57, Lions 31, Browns 28. There's a nice picture right here. There's a nice one right here. Rookie Nick Petrosani bowls through a gaping hole for 11 yards and a first down. Rhodes hits Johnson for a pair. We wipe out a 28-17 deficit, like the old days. There's other pictures on back page. Maybe this will be another of those fantastic years like 57 for our Lions. Nope, not even close. In a stunning reenactment of their old miracles, the seemingly dead and beaten Lions struck twice for touchdowns in the final 93 seconds Sunday to whip the Cleveland Browns 31-28 at Briggs Stadium. Within a 22-second span, Tobin Rote fired 2 scoring passes to John Henry Johnson, one for 24 yards, the other for 28, and within that brief period, the sagging Lions of 1959 suddenly became the same bold and dashing characters who won the world title 2 years ago. This was booked as merely another exhibition game, but you would never convince the 33,435 who saw it that it was meaningless or a game to be forgotten. Nor would you convince the Lions at the end. They jumped into each other's arms and whooped and hollered as if they had just whipped the Baltimore Colts. It was their 31-27 victory over the Colts in October 1957, which first marked the Lions as a miracle team. In that one, remember, they scored twice in the final 2 minutes to touch off a wild scene which rocked Briggs Stadium. That was the moment which ignited a championship season. This finish was almost a duplicate. The Browns, helped by 4 second-half line fumbles, had erased a 17-7 Detroit lead to boom ahead 28-17 midway in the fourth quarter. The Lions have rarely looked as futile as they did at that moment. The 4 fumbles had led to 3 Cleveland touchdowns. Rote could do nothing to get the Lions started again. Over one stretch, he connected on only 1 of 6 passes. With scarcely 2 minutes to play, the Lions were moving ahead, helped by 3 penalties against the Browns. Even this seemed only a token gesture, though, because the Browns were out of reach. Then, at the Cleveland 24, Rote fired another pass over the middle. The ball glanced off the arms of end Jim Gibbons, flashed past the face of a Cleveland defender, Junior Wren, and fell into the arms of Johnson. He was only a few easy strides from the goal. The Lions had cut Cleveland's edge to 28-24, but only a minute and 33 seconds remained. It hardly seemed enough. Then Jim Martin booted the kickoff to the Browns' goal. Leroy Bolden, ex-Michigan, and here are the stats once again. Leroy Bolden, ex-Michigan. All right, so let's go to the next page here, the September 14, 1959 edition of the Detroit Free Press. Bolden, ex-Michigan. Where are we at here? Whoops. Well. What's that? Page 44. What page is that? 43. Ah, my bad. Okay, let's go here. One more page. There we go. Hopalong Cassidy is hauled down from behind. All right, so ex-Michigan State Flash took it and sped upfield. At the 28, Dave Witzel smacked into Bolden. The ball flew away, and Witzel dove on him. Suddenly, the Lions were alive again, just as Lenny Moore's fumble had given them the chance against the Colts 2 years ago. Bolden's fumble beckoned them this time. 2 years ago, Bobby Lane fired to Hopalong Cassidy on the first play after the fumble for the game-winning touchdown. Now on the first play, Rote fired again to Johnson, and the big fullback breezed untouched to the winning score. Only a minute and 11 seconds remained, then a lapse of 22 seconds between the scores. Lions had made it tough for themselves. After piling up a 17-7 lead in the first half, they squandered chances repeatedly. Yale Larry, who later was injured, fumbled a punt early in the third period, and a moment later, Big Jimmy Brown tore around left end for 42 yards to cut Detroit's lead to 17-14. Steve Junker fumbled after a pass from Rote, and only Larry's interception of Mill Plum's pass into Detroit 15 halted the Browns. Ken Webb fumbled it back to Cleveland, and this time the Browns marched home with Ed Modzelewski squeezing over for the touchdown. The score was allowed after Modzelewski apparently had been stopped at the 1, and from that point the officials had trouble controlling the game. Modzelewski scored, but Cleveland had 21-17. Less than 3 minutes later, the Browns scored again after Danny Lewis fumbled on the line 23. Bobby Mitchell went over from the 4 to put the Browns ahead 28-17 with only 8 minutes left. The Lions had looked sharp and effective in the first half. They scored on the first play, on their first attack, Roach spurring a 42-yard push and climaxing it with a dazzling double fake on a pitch out to Lewis to cover the final 10 yards. Mitchell, one-time Big Ten sprint champion, brought the Browns to life in the second period with a 59-yard scoring sprint, but the Lions struck quickly after to make it 14-7. Roach connected with Jim Gibbons for 36 yards, then Nick Petrosani covered the final 14 in two cracks. On the following kickoff, Mitchell raced 91 yards to the Detroit 5 before Hopalong Cassidy collared him. Bolden would fumble at the 1, and the Lions' Wayne Walker ran the ball back to midfield. With 13 seconds left in the half, Jim Martin kicked a 30-yard field goal for the Lions' 17-7 lead at the half. All right, let's see. All right, so that was that. Then I want to go back here. And there was some Lions whoop it up just like in yesteryear. Maybe it was just another exhibition game, but the Lions celebrated like it was for real. Wild yippies, yippee, and piercing yells echoing. I can't see today's modern day football players winning a football game, getting excited. I can see him winning and getting excited, but not saying yippee. Wild yippies and piercing yells echo out of the Detroit locker room for several minutes following the come-from-behind 31-28 triumph over Cleveland. 2 touchdowns in the last 2 minutes made some of the boys think it was just like the old days. George Wilson barred newsmen for 10 minutes. Well, while the players celebrated in private, but the grins, smiles, jokes, and horseplay still were there when the official cooling-off period ended. Charlie Ann and Yale Larry were the only Lions not celebrating. Larry lay quietly on a training room table, ice bags packed around his pulled hamstring muscle, which is just the sort of injury that can sideline a player for a long time. Yep. Ann still was boiling over being tossed out of the game by referee Emil Hines. As soon as the game ended, Hines and Wilson huddled for several seconds. Afterward, Wilson would say only that Ann was banished for beefing about a decision. I failed to bow to Allah, was Ann's sarcastic version. Paul Brown, who still hasn't coached Cleveland to a victory in Briggs Stadium, despite trying 8 times, was a bit snappish. You said it, I didn't, he barked when a newsman asked if there was a jinx involved somewhere. I'll say this much. It was a good, cheap time for my players to learn that you never have a football game wrapped up until it is actually over, Brown said sharply. Yep, it ain't over until it's over. Tobin Road had this to say about the winning TD pass to John Henry Johnson. With Jim Doran out of our lineup, Cleveland wasn't worried about deep stuff. They kept leaving the middle open for passing. I had called variations of the play, but not that same play exactly. You saw what happened. John Henry was wide open. Bobby Mitchell pulled an oddity when he returned a kickoff 91 yards and failed to score. The speedy Cleveland halfback was knocked out of bounds on a 5 by Hopalong Cassidy. Then Leroy Bolden almost scored for Cleveland on a play which saw the Lions almost score. 2. Bolden drove to the 1 where he fumbled. Wayne Walker grabbed the ball in the air and returned it 55 yards. He was in the clear when caught from behind, then fumbled when tackled. The pregame and halftime entertainment was about the best ever served up at a Lions game. Some 16,000 Shriners in town for the Great Lakes Convention paraded around the inside of the stadium before the game and said they offered a gala note of color. The 20 marching units included 2 motorcycle outfits and 2 mounted units plus 8 bands. The game was a Shrine charity affair with part of the proceeds going to the Shriners' 17 hospitals for crippled children. That's very, very nice. Detroit's Muslim Temple plans to make it an annual event. The University of Michigan marching band, breaking a long-standing precedent, gave a tremendous show at halftime. It marked the first time the University of Michigan band ever appeared at a pro football game. Lions president Edwin Anderson, when questioned if the band would return again, shrugged his shoulders mysteriously and called the question out of order. Okay. A dead ball foul call gave a confusing touch to Mitchell's 59-yard scoring run. A clip was called on a Cleveland blocker on the 7, apparently nullifying the TD. Then came the dead ball foul ruling that Mitchell was in the end zone before the clip, so the TD stood up. Interesting. And this is what they had back then in the day, right? Now you see all the Lions football games, including home games, on your own TV. Sensational limited time offer. It's not a kit. It's the cheapest guaranteed reception of channel and 6 Lansing Lions home game station. Channel Master. TV antennas used exclusively. Lions to allow bootleg TV of home games. Wow. How about that? So if you're in the Lions area in 1959 and you want to see the games legally, $49.95, fully guaranteed and installed, less than the cost of a season ticket for 2. Wow, less than what season tickets for 2? I wonder what they cost back then. All right, well, it was a very, very exciting game. Either team certainly could have won. I mean, it's I'm going to Dan Deerdorf you here for a second. A plethora of turnovers marred the game, but some excitement. John Henry Johnson, future Hall of Famer, scored some touchdowns. Bobby Mitchell, future Hall of Famer, scored a touchdown. Some guy by the name of Jim Brown, future Hall of Famer, scored a touchdown. Both these teams. Once again, I'm going to Dan Deerdorf here. Had a plethora of future Hall of Famers on their team. So, these were 2 really, really good teams. Unfortunately, as I showed you earlier in the video, although the Lions had a bunch of good players on their team, a lot of Hall of Famers on their team. Just was not the year. They only won 3 games. And for the Cleveland Browns, and once again, this game was just an exhibition. But during the regular season, Cleveland and the Giants were both tied at 6-2 with 4 games to go. Cleveland, lost 3 straight games and unfortunately took them out of the Eastern Division. A chance of winning the Eastern Division, and the Giants would wind up winning by 3 games. The Giants would be 10-2. The Browns and the Eagles were tied in second place in the Eastern Division with records of 7-5. But once again, this was just exhibition, but wound up being a heck of a lot more interesting, a lot more exciting than the snoozer that they had a couple weeks prior, where the Lions would wind up beating the Browns 9-3. So that's the way it was on this date when the Cleveland Browns invaded Briggs Stadium in Detroit to take on the Lions on September 13th, 1959. In pro football, first 50 years. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.